Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brian Clark, and I'm here tonight, and it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Matt Glover from the firm of Prince, Glover, and Hayes. This firm is down in Tuscaloosa. I was in law school in Tuscaloosa back in the late 80s, and at the time, one of our instructors in our trial classes was Mr. Prince, one of the most impressive and outstanding attorneys I'd ever come across. And his firm is here tonight represented by Mr. Glover, and they handle, primarily from my vantage point, they handle tractor-trailer wrecks. If you got a case as a local attorney, someone's been injured in a tractor-trailer wreck, I don't say seriously because unfortunately when you're hit by a tractor-trailer, it's always serious. If I get a case like that, the first person I think of is this law firm, and particularly Mr. Matt Glover. Matt's originally from West Virginia. He's married to a wonderful young woman. She's a school teacher down there in T-Town. They've got 3 young boys. And I'm proud to say tonight, I look forward to reading this. I just got a copy of it. David and Goliath. It's a book he's recently authored. And I think everybody will want to go on and get a copy of it. And it's going to be my reading for the next couple of days. With that said, I'd like to introduce Mr. Matt Glover. Yes, sir.
Yeah, when I first graduated, my boss gave me a brand new briefcase. It was his. It had a date in it. It said 1975, and I don't know that he thought much of the significance of that, other than that was the year I was born. So, I've been practicing with Bob Prince since 2002, and a lot of what I'm going to talk about tonight comes from my experience during that 14 years that I've been working on the kind of cases that I work on. And I have written a book. I think those of you here tonight have been given a copy of it. And I hope that if you're watching this and you're interested in a copy, you'll give us a call. It's free, or you can download it from the internet. But the whole point of the book, from my perspective, is about the subject that we're going to talk about tonight. And that is the dark side of the industry as I see it in these trucking cases. And it may surprise you because I'm not going to be talking about necessarily the trucking industry itself. You know, it's a requirement under the law that if you're going to operate what's called a commercial vehicle, that you have to have a certain amount of liability insurance. And that number has gone up over the years in terms of what you have to have. But most of the decisions made when there's a serious wreck, which usually is a fatality, those decisions are made by the insurance company. And because it's their dollar most of the time that's at stake, they're calling the shots. And unfortunately, they're becoming more and more aggressive in an attempt to reduce what they have to pay. I don't have any problem with corporations wanting to make money. That's what they're in the business of doing. There's a lot of good that comes from that. But let's be real honest, they don't make money when they pay out a lot of claims. And so most of the time, in an effort to make a profit, they're looking to not pay. And unfortunately, some of these carriers have gone too far. And that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. It's a trucking cases, but it's really going to focus on the importance of preserving evidence. Now, I want you to think about this for just a moment. If it's on the interstate and there is, I'll use the term accident. I'm not crazy about the term because I don't think it's an accident most of the time. But if there's a wreck on the interstate involving an 80,000-pound tractor trailer, and it involves a passenger vehicle, you know, something that weighs between 2,000 and 4,000 pounds. Like I said, chances are there's going to be either one, a serious injury to the occupant of the passenger car, or there's going to be a fatality. Now, most of the truck drivers are trained that if you're in a wreck like that, your very first call is not 911. Now, they may make the 911 call first, but that's not the way they're trained. The first call is made to what is called risk management. Now, risk management is tied into the insurance company, remember, that's designed to minimize the amount of money that is spent. Here's what happens once risk management is contacted. There is already a lawyer on call to begin a vigorous defense of that case. Lawyers have out-negotiated one another, and so if there's a wreck in the Birmingham area and Canal Insurance is the insurance company on the tractor trailer, Canal Insurance gets its call, Canal already has a lawyer in place that it has trained, that is familiar with their processes, and that lawyer, no matter what time of day, is going to be headed to the scene of that serious injury or fatality. Now, I want to tell you why this time period is so critical in these cases. First off, remember what I said. The person in the passenger vehicle is either seriously injured, which means they're leaving the scene in an ambulance, or even worse, they're dead and they're being transported from the site. So when the police arrive and they begin their investigation, and the police officers do a good job, but let's be real candid. At the end of the night, that investigation's over. And there's another accident to investigate the next day, sometimes that evening. This case often becomes just one of many cases. But when that police officer arrives, many times on the scene, there's also a representative from the insurance industry and also a lawyer who's already there to begin a vigorous defense of the case. As they begin to process evidence, one of two of the major players is not there. They're at the hospital. They're at the morgue. And so the person who is often giving the description of what happened is the driver of the tractor trailer. Now, look, many times they tell absolutely the truth. But let me also say that those drivers have been trained, most of them, not all, do not admit liability. So why is this time so important? Well, fortunately, I know most of you have smartphones, right? And if you're like, I do have a great wife, all right? She's a wonderful wife, great kids, she's a good teacher. She gets a new smartphone every year. And then she increases the apps throughout the year. I guarantee you she could land a space rocket on the moon with her iPhone. She's got the iPhone 950 plus, golden style, with the best case. Well, let me tell you, they're very impressive. Well, technology is a beautiful thing, and technology is also a beautiful thing because it helps us in what we have to do when we investigate these trucking wrecks. Because trust me, all of these trucks are equipped with the latest of technology, which in a lot of instances takes out the guesswork in terms of trying to decide whose fault it is when a particular wreck happens. So tonight's presentation is focused on the importance of preserving evidence, especially at the scene. Now, this is just a classic example of why it's important to preserve evidence. This is just a standard wreck that occurred north of Dothan, Alabama, where this truck that you see here was actually hit from behind by an 18-wheeler, and then this budget truck was pushed in to a passenger car. Well, the operator of the budget vehicle made a wise decision. He contacted a local attorney who knew exactly that he needed to get an expert out there to take a look at the tractor trailer almost immediately. And the reason is because much like that smartphone that we have, there is an on-board computer system on the tractor trailer. All of them have on-board systems now. It's just a matter of how sophisticated is it. Let me give you an example, and this is standard, but just how sophisticated the onboard computer system can be. Now what you're seeing here is a download from the tractor trailer that hit the budget truck. And you see a series of blue lines. Let me tell you what those blue lines are. This tractor trailer is so sophisticated that it is constantly monitoring vehicles around it. You may have seen commercials for Mercedes, for instance. And I think even the Volkswagen has them now, where if you're not paying attention, your car is sensing the vehicle in front of it, it is measuring the closing speed, and on its own it can begin brake application. That's what this onboard computer system was doing on the tractor trailer. It was monitoring vehicles in front, it was monitoring vehicles beside, it was even monitoring vehicles behind it. And from that system, here's what we know. If you'll just look at the yellow area, this is the when the actual impact occurred. It was going 45 miles an hour when the budget truck was going 10. And if you look north of that, you'll see that the tractor trailer was maintaining the same speed while the budget truck was slowing down. And that's why the wreck occurred, because the driver simply wasn't paying attention. And in this particular case, the computer system actually would alert the driver, through a siren to notify you're closing in on a vehicle way too soon, but that had been disabled by the driver because that got annoying. So he had taken that out. But the point is, this is the kind of critical evidence that's out there and available soon after a wreck. Let me show you one other example. This was in Tuscaloosa. And then where I'm leading with this is to show you what the industry will do knowing that this type of evidence exists. This wreck here was involving an 18-wheeler, obviously, and a passenger vehicle, where the passenger vehicle was at a green light but did not have a green arrow, and saw traffic coming in the opposite direction slowing down. Right or wrong, the driver decided to cut across the lane of traffic, thinking that traffic was slowing down. But from the other perspective, what the truck driver saw was the light going from green to yellow. And so that truck driver made a decision where he had been trained to stop. He decided not to do that. But let me show you how we establish that, because again, most drivers would be told, do not admit liability. In this case, that would be, do not admit that you gunned it in an effort to try to beat the light. Now, I'm not saying this truck driver would have followed through with company policy, but that's what they're trained to do. Again, you've got sophisticated onboard system. Now, the bottom right hand is data that we actually received from the DOT to get like the light sequencing. Those things do have a computer system as well that dictates when they're supposed to. That's why you see police officers, like after a game, they'll be standing by the box controlling the lights, because if they're not doing that, it's on a computer system and the lights are changing based upon how they're programmed. The top left, at the top of the screen, highlighted column, you see the 5 seconds leading up to the wreck. That's the throttle position. So you go from 0 to lights changing to yellow to now I'm hitting 100%, trying to beat the light. Again, this is the type, hey, it's on your smartphone, it's on these cars, it's on these trucks. This is the kind of data that's out there. And so the point of that is time is of the essence. This data will not hang around for very long. You can say whatever you want about lawyers, and I don't have a problem with it. I've got pretty thick skin about it. But I'm a firm believer in this. If someone is injured or they've lost someone in a wreck, the time to hire a lawyer is right then and there. And there's nothing wrong with that. Some people take the position, well, we'll wait 6 months, we'll see how things go, let us just get healed up, let us bring closure to what happened, and then we'll consider whether we've got a legal option. Keep in mind, when you do that, which is your right to do that, what's the other side doing? They're not waiting 6 months. They've got 6 months where they're already building a case. And so I tell people, when is the time to hire a lawyer? Now. Because now is the time that is most critical. And I hope you do. If you want one of these, let me know. Be glad to get them to you. If you're watching it, be glad to get it to you. Because this whole book is called David versus Goliath, and the purpose of that is trying to expose what the industry has done and how important it is to attack the industry through the preservation of evidence, which I believe, look, what is wrong with trying to preserve evidence? That's the truth. So here is why time is of the essence. Evidence will be destroyed. Now, I know that again, you probably know truck drivers. And you said, look, I hear you. That's not the truck driver I know. Or some of you would say, I know small business owners. That's not the small business owners I know. Look, you remember what I said? They're not making the decision. The decisions are not made by the driver and the dispatcher or the terminal manager. They're made by someone out of state in the insurance industry. And let me give you proof tonight, based upon real-life cases that we work on, that there are times when evidence will be destroyed. Now, first off, it's one thing for me to say it. You expect me to say it, because there's no doubt about it. I'm passionate about this subject and what I believe. This here is an industry expert, someone who routinely testifies on behalf of the insurance industry and the trucking industry. Now, why in the world he ever gave this interview, I have no idea. He must have gone to a service on Sunday and felt really guilty, and come Monday morning gave a great interview, because on Monday morning, here's what he said. He said, look, the data from the tractors, that should be extracted, download it, and believe it or not, you download it with the computer, much like I've got over there on my desk. It's nothing fancy. But you got to download it because it contains critical evidence. But what I have found out is that the trucking industry, and what he's really saying is the insurance industry, will deliberately hide evidence, and it will delete evidence in an effort to do what? Maximize, no, minimize what is to be paid out. Okay, so now that's the industry expert. This is a very typical wreck. Now realize that if a wreck happens on the interstate, many times there will be witnesses. But if you're on a lot of rural highways, chances are there's going to be two. And one of them is not going to be around. And so many times when the lawyers and the experts get the call, they go to the scene, they know, because there's law enforcement there, they say, hey, were there any witnesses? No, there's no witnesses. But what they see many times is the physical evidence at the scene. Now, this is a very typical wreck. On the surface of it, it would appear that the person in the passenger vehicle pulled out in front of an 18-wheeler going down a rural highway. And trust me, that's exactly what the truck driver said. But you see from the photograph skid marks, right? Now, I'm not smart enough to tell you what skid marks mean in terms of speed, because I've learned that it's a little more complicated than it looks and appears. But when you see lengthy skid marks, that is an indication that speed may be an issue. And so when that lawyer and that expert and that industry adjuster walks over and says, okay, now where's our tractor? Yep, that's it. I want you to lift up the hood. Oh, yep, it's got one of those, I call them a black box, and you've heard it on the TV called a black box, I'm sure, especially when planes crash. There's not many of them that are black. And this one wasn't black either. It was yellow, which seems to be the standard color. But what that box has on it is the type of data that we just talked about, right? Throttle, speed, things that if you look at, you don't have to guess, is the truck driver telling the truth when he says, yeah, I was driving the speed limit, and that person in the passenger vehicle just pulled out in front of me. See, if you start looking at that data, there is a chance that you are going to discover that, one, your truck driver was actually speeding, two, he wasn't telling you the truth, and three, we may have liability in this case. Remember, our goal from the industry perspective, we don't want people admitting liability. And we want to reduce the amount that we have to pay. So really, what's the advantage to us to hook up our computer? Wouldn't it make more sense for us to pay an expert $20,000 to come in and testify that the truck driver was not speeding based upon the skid marks, as opposed to do a $300 download and find out what the truth is? In this particular case, the lawyer, the expert, and the insurance rep said, shut the hood. We're not going to download it. Because we know that if we get this rig back out on the road, in 300 engine hours, guess what's going to happen? That data's going to roll on off. Kind of like your odometer, right? After you make so many trips across town, that thing rolls on over. And that's exactly what happens with some of this data. Well, fortunately, the law in Alabama is if that happens and somebody catches them doing that, the jury gets to infer from that, guess what? The fact that, yeah, he was speeding. That's a real-life example. But not only will it be destroyed, it'll be lied about. Now, it took me, now I'll say, Alan, in 2002, I graduated and I was naive. Now, I'm still probably naive. But I was real naive in 2002. I just assumed when you raised your hand and you said you were going to swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but truth, you were going to tell the truth. Especially what, and I know y'all are going to laugh when I say this, but I just assumed lawyers were going to tell the truth. I knew you'd laugh. Well, one of the things that we do in every case is we know to ask questions under oath. Did the tractor that you were operating at the time of the wreck have one of these black boxes, event data recorders, electric control modules? There's a bunch of names for them. They all know what we're talking about. And if it did, describe the capabilities of it. Well, we had a case in South Alabama, fatality. There's a lot at stake here. A nice lady died taking her handicapped child somewhere. You know, there's a lot of exposure here for the insurance industry. Out-of-town truck driver, coming through Alabama, trying to get somewhere, going through an intersection he'd never been before. Lawyer at the scene that day. Lawyers at the scene that day too, because that's the way it works. So we ask, and this is the answers we get. No, it doesn't have one. Now look, I was naive, but I wasn't stupid, because I knew that all these trucks had them. And it was just a matter of figuring out which one. Well, for instance, if you got a car tonight and you bought it within the last 5 years, you may still have the tag in the glove compartment that lists out all the equipment, you know, all that extra equipment you paid a lot of extra money for because it sounded good at the time you bought the car. Well, you know what? Those pieces of paper come with tractor trailers too. And all you got to do is, if you have any doubt, is you take the VIN number and you find out where it was purchased, and you say, I want to see all the equipment that was purchased with this tractor at the time it was. Because, you know, that tractor's been salvaged. We can't look at it anymore. You know, You're going to have to take our word on it. There was no black box on that. It was a dinosaur. They didn't have one. Well, one of the great things state troopers do is they take pictures. And they're expensive pictures, too. They're about $25 a piece. we got to pay for these roads. Well, you know, it's not fun looking through pictures. And that's not a great quality picture there, but there was enough in that picture to know that there's a screen in this cab. You know what it is? It's feeding the data directly. Some dinosaur, it was feeding the data right into the cab. So the truck driver could see a lot of different, and let me tell you why this type of equipment's on the tractor. You're thinking, well, if the equipment is that damaging and it's going to make liability, why do they have it on there? Because it allows the insurance companies and the corporations themselves to monitor fuel efficiency. And if you're too hard on that tractor and you're not managing your fuel efficiency, you're costing us money. So all this nice data is on there so that the company can help manage its profit from a mechanical fuel perspective. Well, it also has all this other great stuff on there. Well, this was feeding information directly to the driver. Well, we checked, son of a gun. Turns out it had what was called the road relay system on it, which is another sophisticated piece of equipment. It gives charts. So as your truck driver's coming through the state, going into this intersection where he hadn't been before, and he runs into a situation like the witness says, very similar to that last case that I showed you. You know, oh, going yellow. What do I do? Do I stop or do I throttle it? Which is exactly what the witness has said this truck driver appeared to do. Of course, he denied that. This type of evidence was on there, which would have either done one of two things. It would have validated what he said, or it would have proved that both he and his lawyer were, well, you fill in the blank, not truthful. That's what my mom would want me to say. Not truthful. They lie about evidence, okay? They falsify it. Why am I telling you this? So when is the time to act? If this is the type of evidence that is critical, right? And if it's the kind of evidence that can make the difference, and if it's the kind of evidence that can shed truth on what happened, which should be the pursuit of everyone, then when's the time to act? Now, not 6 months from now. I know there's some of you still not convinced by me. And that's all right, because I got another 30 minutes. I'm going to have you convinced by the time we leave here. And what I've done is I've gone through and I've selected different insurance companies and different lawyers and different wrecks. And let me tell you, this is, unfortunately, this is a trend. This one was the very first fatality that I ever worked on. So you know I was naive. Well, this was it. Terrible down in right outside of Tuscaloosa. Multiple fatalities. And call was placed into risk management. Lawyer out at the scene. I'm not going to talk a lot about it tonight, but there's something called logbooks. You know, truck drivers have to monitor where they are, and there's reasons for that because you've got a certain number of hours that you can operate. You can't go over it. And, well, the troopers know that it's very important when they go to the scene to identify the logbook because it can give them critical information about whether someone is over their hours because we know that fatigue is one of the leading contributors to wrecks that occur on the interstate in particular. Well, this was a very good state trooper. He does his job, and he documents in his report that there were no driver's logs, just none, which is not really uncommon. Sometimes they just don't have them, which is a huge violation, but it does happen. But we filed the lawsuit based upon evidence that we had collected. We felt we had a case against the trucking company. And one of the things that we always ask for is the driving logs. And we didn't expect to get any because, you know, the trooper was out there. We were not out there. And the trooper said there were none. Well, we started getting a bunch of them in. And again, I've already told you, I don't mind telling you, I'm not that smart. And I can't really look at them and analyze myself, the trends. But I know who to contact, and we've got an expert who does that. And they can quickly tell if they're truthful, if there's violations, or if they've been, I think the term is pencil whipped. You know, y'all know what that is. Well, these appear to be pencil whipped because we were dealing with probably the best truck driver in the history of the world. Never made a mistake, never drove over the speed limit, only stopped to pray, that kind of stuff. And look, we had an issue here. The trooper says there were none, and now we've got some coming from the lawyer, and I mean, they're perfect, So there's got to be an explanation. Well, there was, and I've given this one before, and I'll give it again because I think it really exposes the truth about something. The lawyer at the scene of the fatality with the insurance rep got up in the cab. Now, this is an active investigation. The bodies hadn't been taken from the scene yet. And they're up there in the cab getting stuff out. And they claim that they removed it. They got them out. And let me tell you what they thought. I don't want. They said we thought it was his personal effects, like toothbrush, shampoo, deodorant, shaving cream. We just happened to get the logbooks because those look a lot alike, right? Yeah. Well, you probably know how that case ended up. It didn't go into the courthouse. I'll say that. All right. This is probably the most egregious that I've seen. But it supports the point that evidence will be falsified. And I know I'm supposed to come up here tonight and just talk about all the great stuff from the legal community. Lawyers donate a lot of time, and they do pro bono work, and they do, and we always find the justice, and it does, look, there's a lot of bad happens, and that's unfortunate. But that's why they're lawyers, because good lawyers expose wrongdoing. And again, I'm very passionate about what I do because I take very serious. That's why I wrote a whole book on it, about why we have to expose this in order to find the truth. Because let me tell you what happens. There's another side of this coin. When you find the truth, sometimes you find out from our perspective that our client was wrong. And we want to know the truth. And when we get the download that shows that, you know what we do? We turn the case down. That's the way it should happen. We shouldn't be able to say, well, we're just not going to give them that report, and we're going to concoct a story that it was somebody else's fault. We don't do that. Why is it right for the other side to do it? It's not right. And let me show you just how far some will actually go. Now, this is a crane, so I'm a little off topic here, but we'll say it's heavy equipment. All right, that'll be close enough. Crane topples over, man gets killed. All right? And because of this fatality, you've got to have OSHA involved. All right? Now, OSHA, but the troopers want to see your logbooks. OSHA wants to see where's your crane certification. You know what a crane certification is somebody's supposed to check that crane to make sure it is safe, that it meets all the standards, so it doesn't topple over and kill somebody because an outrigger fails. Okay? Which is what our investigation showed, that an outrigger had a hydraulic leak, caved over, and the man was crushed to death. And that's exactly what it is. Well, OSHA wants to see the crane certification. Now, this fatality happened on July the 6th, right after July the 4th, July the 6th. They give OSHA the crane certification. Now, according to this certification, it was certified 6 months before. My math's not good. Maybe it's 5 months, 5.5. Somebody will call me out on it. That's all right. Before the fatality. Months before the fatality, this crane was certified. OSHA washes its hands because OSHA's got to go on and do another investigation because somebody else got killed across town. We took the case because the outrigger failed and we knew something wasn't right. Let me show you this. This is the day of the fatality. Let me show you. This is the day of, this is hours after a man was killed. The owner of the crane is contacting the guy who would do the certification, wanting to know, will you backdate a certification because OSHA's going to be here tomorrow, and that's the first document that we're going to want to see. Here it is. So yes, I went out there in February. I checked out your crane. It wasn't in a condition where it could be certified, but I'll go ahead and put my name on it because you're one of my top 10 customers. Of course, he didn't say it that way, but I'll backdate it. Well, that's falsifying evidence. It happens every day. And the only way that you can expose this is to act when? 6 months from now, I'm telling you, those emails are going to disappear. Good lawyers, and I'm not saying we are, I'm just saying good lawyers know you have to preserve evidence. And evidence can be a black box, evidence can be a logbook, evidence can be a photograph, evidence can be electronic emails. One of the first things a lawyer should send out is a do not take any steps to destroy correspondence, including emails. Because we all know that when you send a text message or you send an email and you don't know something's going to happen later, you probably told the truth at the time you sent that email. And that's exactly what happened here. They never thought they'd get caught. The evidence was preserved, and the evidence is very damning. Now, what I also believe is that preserved evidence tells the true story. I've given you a lot of examples of how people will lie about evidence. They'll falsify evidence. But let me tell you, the preserved evidence tells the truth. Okay, let me give you an example here. And I think this is probably the example that for you and those watching should really show why it's important to be interested in preserving the truth. Now, everybody here has watched, I mean, there's so many different of these I went to bed last night, and my wife's in there. You know, she had her smartphone, but she was in there watching Dateline. They love Dateline. It's like, I don't even know why they watch those things. I mean, we all know how it's going to end. I mean, every time. But let me tell you, if it's on, she's going to watch it. And watch it to the end and act like, oh, didn't see that coming, you know. But one thing we all know from Dateline is if you're going to count on eyewitness testimony, it's going to be all over the place, right? And it's not because everybody lies. It's just people don't get it right. They're distracted. They have memory issues. They just see things differently. They sometimes see what they want to see and don't even realize that's what they're wanting to see. But you can honestly have witnesses all over an intersection, and they'll say, yep, he ran the red light. Nope, she ran the red light. Nope, nobody ran the red light. I mean, it's all over the place. And there's studies out there. It's just not that reliable all the time. I want to show you, this is, for those of you, this is around Tuscaloosa. This is in front of Mercedes, where they make the cars. And we're real thankful to have this place in Tuscaloosa because it's been great. Between Nick Saban and Mercedes, Tuscaloosa has really, and no offense to you Auburn people out there, but those two right there have really been good for the Tuscaloosa community. Well, this is the drive leading to Mercedes. And there was a lady, she was coming off her shift after working all night. You see those trees down there on the right? She pulled out and got hit by an 18-wheeler. No witnesses except truck driver. Truck driver said, you know, she pulled out. Don't know why. She's pulled out in front of me. Nothing I can do. Officer says, well, tell us, how fast were you driving? Now, let's play a game here. Speed limit's 40, or let's say 45. How fast do you think truck drivers go? 45, right on it. I mean, look, it's inevitable because everybody right before they have a wreck, they look down, check their speed. Yep, boom. I was going the speed limit. But this particular truck driver said just that. It's 40 miles an hour. I was going 40 miles an hour. Wasn't going 39, wasn't going 41. I was going, I'm a legal person. I follow the law. I was going 40 miles per hour. Now, let me just say, one of the things you may have noticed from that picture are all those trees, right? One of the things, and let me tell you, Bob Prince is a great trial lawyer, and that's why I went to work for him, and I've worked for him for 14 years, and there's not many lawyers who hang out at one firm for 14 years. I'm hanging out there and still hanging out there because every day I learn something new from that man. I've said this before, when he pulls out pictures, he gets out the magnifying glass, and Alan, it's not because of his age. He's been pulling out that magnifying glass since he was 25 because he sees things in photographs that I just simply don't see. Now, those trees, you don't need a magnifying glass to see those trees. But first thing he'll say when he sees that, well, I know why she pulled out. She couldn't see. It's not like nobody's going to pull out in front of an 18-wheeler unless they're on a suicide mission. You know, she didn't see the 18-wheeler coming, and there were trees there which obstructed her vision. Those trees came down right after the accident, which proved his point. But what we know is you got to preserve the evidence, because it's only going to be the evidence that's going to demonstrate, one, what the truck driver was really doing, right? And we've all been through this now for 40 minutes, so we know what that tractor had. This is where it tells the true story, all right? I'm not saying that truck driver was lying. He may have genuinely believed he was going 40 miles an hour. There have probably been times when we've been pulled, not me, there have probably been times when you have been pulled over by a state trooper, and the state trooper said you were speeding, and you honestly believed that you were not speeding. And look, for all we know, he was being honest in his mind when he said I was going 40 and a 40. But much like that eyewitness testimony, the evidence takes out the guesswork. I want to explain how this data works. There's something called a hard braking event. And what that is, you know, most of the time right before the wreck, somebody slams on the brakes, right? You slam on the brakes. Well, if your speed drops a certain amount of miles per hour in 1 second, that is abnormal. And so the clock now says, oh, something's happened. We call it a hard braking event. So now I'm going to capture data, and I can capture data before that, and I can capture data after. It's just beautiful technology. It takes the guesswork out. So you can see 0 is at the moment of impact. The next column over is the speed. All right? Now, that's not 40. That wasn't even close to 40. 61 and accelerating. And by the way, on a road he's not supposed to be on. You're not supposed to be on that service road. So, look, all I'm saying is, forget whether, you don't have to get into somebody's motivation. I'm not in, believe it or not, y'all are not, I'm not in the business of calling individuals liars. But this data doesn't lie. It tells the truth, and this is why this evidence here, if it's not preserved, is going to disappear, because the only way that the industry can minimize what they pay, this is a case here that if the data is not preserved, do you know how much it's worth? 0. If the data is preserved, the value of it is much higher than 0, okay? That's why you have these decisions being made at the scene. Many times, though, the preservation of evidence that not only tells a true story, it tells the full story. Have there ever been times in your life, and I'm not really asking for an example, this is what we call a rhetorical question, where you thought you knew the story? Who was that guy on the radio? And now the rest of the story, right? Man, Paul Harvey, my grandpa listened to Paul Harvey every day. And I love getting to spend time with him to eat those hot dogs and listen to Paul Harvey. And those stories were very interesting, because he was taking a truthful part and he was adding more to it that you didn't know, okay? That happens a lot when evidence is preserved. Many times everybody knows the truth or what they think the truth is, but there's another part of the story that you don't know, that you didn't get to know before the preservation of evidence. Let me give you an example. This is up in Blount County. This is Tyson. Good company. Don't have any problem with Tyson. They make good chicken. You don't want to know the process. Just enjoy the chicken, all right? The process ain't good, but the chicken is. All right, well, this is where it comes in on this side of the plant. The chickens are still alive. It goes out on that side of the plant. Now the chicken's frozen, okay? But there's a security guard, nice man, worked for generations, decades up there at this Tyson facility. He's a security guard. He's a go-getter. He's doing everything he can to help people. He's in that, what we call a shipping yard on the right side. And there is a truck driver who is picking up those trailers and taking them up to the dock. The security guard comes out, is walking up to the side of the truck to see if he needs any help. The truck doesn't see him, takes off, crushes him. And like most crush injuries, you think you're okay, and then suddenly you die. I mean, there's so much stress placed on your body, and that's what happened here, okay? And I don't want to get into the details of that. But everybody thought they knew what the truth was. Yeah, okay, the man walks out, walks to the next to the truck takes off, this good man dies. And this was his best friend driving a tractor trailer. So, I mean, this was a tough emotional situation. Well, fortunately, this lawyer in Blount County knew we needed to preserve evidence. And as I've told y'all, it's not just limited to the computer, and it's not just limited to emails. It can be, look, we want to see the actual tractor, and we don't want any modifications made to it because, look, if they don't get a letter like that, they're going to make modifications to it. They may sell the tractor, they may move the tractor, they may see a problem with the tractor, they may correct it. I mean, there's just a lot of things that can happen. This lawyer was smart enough in Blount County to say, look, we want to preserve it. We want to see it. And he goes out and he takes a bunch of pictures. They probably seem meaningless to him, but remember, there are people actually that got these magnifying glasses. And they look at it, now that's the tractor. Now, I could have spent 10 years out there, and I would never have noticed this. Of course, that wouldn't surprise my dad. You know, it wouldn't surprise my dad at all. But we went to see another inspection, but the tractor was different. Now, some of y'all may have picked up on it. There it is, there it is, there it is, there it is. That one right there has got an extra mirror on the driver's side, one of those long round mirrors, help you see, and I think they call them blind spots, right? Well, it doesn't seem like a big deal, except if you look there at the bottom, that's with that round mirror, and you can see a person standing in the location where the security guard was crushed. Now, that is something that OSHA missed. That may have been something that Tyson missed. That may have been something that everybody in the world, except someone who actually studies photographs, would have missed. What that did, it didn't change the truth, but it added, as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story. And the rest of the story then led to this. Y'all may not have noticed this. Let me do this real quick. Well, there's the first picture. Live chickens on the left, frozen chickens on the right. Tractors are coming in the left side. Tractors are going out the right side. See those yellow painted marks on this side? Give you a close-up of that. You know what those are? Those are walk zones, areas to walk in. Heavy equipment stay out of those areas. They had made changes to one side of the plant, but not the other side of the plant, and the reason is because 2 years before at two different other Tyson facilities, one in Oklahoma and one in Arkansas, the exact same thing had happened. That's an example where one picture led to, because when you go do an inspection, they don't take you on this side. They take you over where it happened. They don't get to say, oh, we want to show you now the other side, and take note of the yellow paint. They don't do that. Matter of fact, you're told you can't even go on that side. And that's nothing against Tyson, because Tyson's not making that decision. You all know by now who's making the decision. All right, my final point here, and then I'm going to wrap up tonight. And that is, sometimes the preservation of evidence tells a brand new story. I've given you where it will add to the story, where it shows the other side of the story, perhaps where it shows the true story. Sometimes it just honestly shows a whole new story, okay? And let me tell you what I mean. Now, you should know by now, and because I know everybody's going to act quickly, that there's a lot of different types of evidence. And let me tell you, lawyers send out what we call preservation of evidence letters. And, I mean, it looks like some of the books in the Bible. I mean, they're long. Because we know if you don't ask for something and you don't hold your mouth just right, it's not going to get preserved. So anything that we can think of, from surveillance video to photographs to emails, and let me tell you, it's even become so sophisticated now that we send experts in to look at computers to see whether or not you've really preserved all your emails. Because, you know, there's such a temptation there to delete, delete, delete. You know, it's like with the FBI. They bust in your house with a warrant, you know, and they look at your computers. They can find out what you've been looking at, and they can find out what you've been destroying. We hire experts that do the exact same thing with emails. So you obviously know where I'm going with this. One of the things we want to see is we want to see your emails. We want to see your text messages. We want to see your Facebook account. We want to see anything and everything we can, because we know that many times it's the one picture that makes the difference. Okay, this here good, honest, hard-working truck driver goes up to Detroit from Alabama to pick up steel coils. I've given this example before, I believe, but not to where I'm going tonight, because this has been an evolving story. He's in the process of having these loaded by an overhead crane on the back of his tractor, and some bands bust, because, you know, the bands are holding it together. They bust, come off and, hit the truck driver. And, took off a leg. He's a young man, too. But OSHA comes out, and OSHA looks at it and says, well, and again, I'm not faulting OSHA. They're overworked. They got to respond to every type of on-the-job accident, and they've got 2 hours. I know they've got the authority to do all that they want, and they're good people, but I'm just telling you, they're moving on to the next file. They go out there, truck drivers, you know where he's at. He's at the hospital, right? He's not going to get interviewed. Well, let me tell you what the truck driver's doing. He's up on the back of that truck. We told him not to be up there because, a lot of times you can yell at somebody, tell them to get off something. They're just not going to do it. And this was obviously, had everybody there in the warehouse knew each other. They didn't know this truck driver, and the truck driver became an easy target. Yeah, we told him, don't be up there. This is dangerous. Those coils could fall over. And that's what they said. And, the investigator said, yeah, if he's up there, he's not supposed to be up there. Let me guess, he didn't have him chained down either. No, he hadn't got that far. Yeah. Case closed. Easy. Truck driver's at fault. Pack it up, boys. That's just, that's why I always tell people, look, don't get hung up on a police report. Don't get hung up on an OSHA report. Don't get hung up on an MSHA report if it happens in the coal mines, because let me tell you, those reports are not admissible. It's a good starting position, but that officer didn't see what happened. And look, we'll take that information for what it's worth, but it's not the end of the story. Well, this here is the shipping instructions that we got. See, if he had just loaded it like this, nothing would have happened. Well, he was loaded like that. So what do you mean nothing would have happened? Well, through the preservation of evidence, here's what, now remember, you got to send somebody in, you got to hire an expert to get in somebody's computer and dig this stuff out. But here's what we found out. There was this photograph in the computer. This was taken a couple years before this man lost his leg. This is the exact same type of coils, same size, same number, using the same shipping instructions. Well, you can tell there's a problem. This picture, because coils, you just can't have them leaning like that, because you come around one curve, and bands are going to pop. Stress is going to be applied, the bands are going to pop, and coils are going to come off and kill somebody in the car behind them. Okay. So this company made a decision. We can't use these shipping instructions anymore. We've got to build specialty crates so we can drop those tall, narrow coils down in these racks so that they don't fall over. Now, of course, we had never seen this picture before. All right, this was something that was dug out of a computer system, which led to us asking a lot of questions. Well, what are these about, and why were these not used? Well, you know how this works. You got this good customer over here who needs some steel coils, and they need them right now. And these racks here are down in South Georgia, and the coils are in Detroit. And we need the coils in Alabama, and we need them there tomorrow. And the truck driver from Tuscaloosa, he didn't have the racks. He didn't even heard about the racks. Nobody's ever told him about these racks. We need them right now, because you know what happens. If we don't get it right now, what's going to happen? We're going to find somebody who can do it, especially if it's a big customer, like a company who would backdate a crane certification. Money is important to a lot of people. So I tell you what, email, preservation of evidence, email. I suggest that we see if Cleaver, that's the name of the company, will allow us to ship stand-up without racks on this purchase. It will save time and money. It'll cost a leg, but it'll save time. And now, do you think for a second that the lady who drafted that thought somebody's going to lose their leg? No. Do you think that she would have sent that had she thought? No. You think she's being honest there? Yes. But you know how you get these emails? Only through the preservation of evidence. So here's where I want to leave you. I'll go back to this. Hey, this is free. Y'all think I'm trying to push this and make money. This thing is free. As my wife would say, ain't nobody pay for this. If you make this as good a Dateline, somebody will buy it. But until then, you got to give it away free. But this book is all designed towards exposing what I've said tonight. And look, there may be another side to this, okay? But I've given you the truthful side as we have experienced it. And I'm telling you this in order to educate you that the day should come where you know somebody who needs an attorney, you know you need to tell them, look, I don't care what you do, but you need to act now, because if you don't act now, your opportunity to act later may not be as meaningful. All right? Well, thank you for listening to me tonight. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to take those.